The Bugatti had been dead for 8 long days under the bright white lights of the luxury service garage, surrounded by the best automotive minds money could buy. Engineers in pressed uniforms stared at laptops worth more than family cars. Specialists flew in from different cities. $500,000 had already vanished into diagnostics, replacement systems, encrypted software scans, and experimental repairs. Yet the black machine sat there like a lifeless monument to failure, silent and cold while wealthy executives grew impatient by the hour. Then, just after sunrise on the 9th morning, a tired single father wearing grease-stained work boots walked into the garage carrying a lunchbox and an old backpack. 5 minutes later, the impossible happened. The Bugatti roared back to life. If you believe kindness and second chances still exist in this world, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Wisdom Story House. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones nobody notices. Morning sunlight poured through the giant glass windows of Elias Motors, one of the most elite automotive restoration facilities in the country. The marble floors reflected million-dollar vehicles lined like jewels in a museum. Mechanics whispered around exotic engines with nervous precision because one mistake could cost more than a house. In the center bay sat the Bugatti Chiron Noir, owned by billionaire investor Magnus Virelli, a man known for firing employees over tiny failures. The car had stopped during a private event in front of cameras and business partners, humiliating him publicly. Since then, pressure inside the garage had become unbearable. The specialists barely slept. They replaced modules, rewired systems, dismantled panels, and even contacted the manufacturer overseas. Nothing worked. Every test returned perfect readings, yet the engine remained dead. Magnus threatened lawsuits. The company's reputation trembled. Managers barked orders while exhausted mechanics argued with one another under their breath. Outside the building, unnoticed by most employees, sat a faded blue pickup truck held together by rust and stubbornness. Inside it was a man named Elias Mercer. 42 years old. Hollow eyes. Rough hands scarred by years of labor. He worked maintenance at the garage, mostly cleaning floors, organizing discarded parts, and fixing broken shop equipment nobody cared about. Most executives didn't even know his name. Elias lived in a tiny rented duplex on the edge of town with his 10-year-old daughter, Junie. Every morning before sunrise, he braided her hair while she ate cereal beside the kitchen window. Every night he returned home exhausted, pretending not to notice overdue bills hidden beneath magnets on the refrigerator. Since his wife passed away 3 years earlier from a sudden illness, Elias carried the weight of 2 lives on his shoulders. He worked double shifts to keep Junie fed and in school, but some nights he sat awake in darkness wondering how much longer he could keep fighting. Junie believed her father could fix anything. That belief was the only thing keeping him alive. The morning the Bugatti came back to life started like every other day. Elias dropped Junie at school with a smile he didn't fully feel. She hugged him tightly before running toward the entrance, then suddenly turned back and shouted that she knew he would have a good day today. Her voice echoed in his heart long after she disappeared into the building. By the time Elias arrived at Elias Motors, tension hung in the air like smoke. Executives marched across the showroom while technicians scrambled around the Bugatti. A senior engineer slammed a diagnostic tablet onto a workbench in frustration. Another cursed under his breath about corrupted startup synchronization. Elias quietly pushed his cleaning cart past them while everyone ignored him. But he noticed something. Years ago, before life collapsed around him, Elias had been an exceptional mechanic. Not certified. Not famous. But gifted. He grew up helping his grandfather rebuild engines in a small countryside garage where people fixed things instead of replacing them. He understood machines differently. He listened to them. Felt them. Back then he dreamed of opening his own repair shop someday. Then came medical debt, endless responsibilities, and grief. Dreams slowly disappeared beneath survival. As he swept near the Bugatti, Elias noticed one of the specialists repeatedly running startup commands while another checked fuel pressure readings. Everyone focused on software, electronics, high-tech systems. Yet something tiny bothered him. A faint clicking sound near the firewall panel, almost hidden beneath the noise of equipment. He paused. One engineer snapped at him to keep moving. Elias lowered his eyes and obeyed. But the clicking stayed in his mind all morning. During lunch break, he sat alone behind the building eating a peanut butter sandwich while staring at oil stains in the pavement. Around him, expensive cars came and went. Wealthy customers barely glanced at the workers opening their doors. Elias thought about Junie's school shoes with holes forming near the soles. He thought about rent due in 4 days. Then he remembered the sound again. Click. 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 A memory surfaced from years earlier. An imported performance car with nearly identical symptoms. Everyone assumed computer failure. But the issue had been mechanical resonance interfering with a grounding relay hidden beneath heat shielding. His heart started racing. He knew he should ignore it. Men like him didn't interrupt specialists earning 6 figures. But another thought entered his mind. What if he was right? That afternoon chaos erupted again inside the garage. Magnus Virelli himself arrived surrounded by security and assistants. His anger infected the room instantly. He demanded answers nobody could provide. One executive quietly mentioned the possibility of transporting the Bugatti overseas for factory reconstruction. The cost would be enormous. Elias stood silently near the back wall clutching his mop handle. Then the billionaire shouted something that froze everyone. If nobody here can fix it today, every contract in this building changes tomorrow. Fear spread across the technicians' faces. And somehow, before he could stop himself, Elias spoke. Very softly. May I take a look? The room went silent. Several mechanics turned toward him with disbelief. One laughed openly. Another muttered that maintenance staff should stay in maintenance. Magnus stared at Elias like he was invisible dirt suddenly trying to speak. But desperation changes people. One manager rolled his eyes and told Elias he had 5 minutes before security escorted him away. The specialist stepped back with folded arms, waiting to be entertained. Elias approached the Bugatti slowly. Sunlight reflected across the polished black curves of the car like liquid obsidian. He placed one rough hand gently against the hood and closed his eyes for a second, listening. Then he crouched near the firewall. Click. There it was again. Tiny. Irregular. He asked for a flashlight and screwdriver. Nobody moved. Finally a young apprentice handed them over nervously. Elias removed a lower panel with calm precision. Dust coated the hidden compartment beneath. He reached carefully behind a heat shield and touched a relay housing no larger than a matchbox. His fingers paused. Loose grounding pin. Heat vibration had caused intermittent disconnects during ignition synchronization. The diagnostics never caught it because the failure happened too quickly and too inconsistently. Elias adjusted the pin gently, secured the housing, and reassembled the panel. The room watched in silence. He stood up and nodded toward the start button. One specialist smirked before pressing it. For one breathless second, nothing happened. Then the Bugatti exploded to life. The engine roared through the garage with terrifying power. Deep thunder shook the floor beneath everyone's feet. Lights flickered overhead. Mechanics stared in absolute disbelief while the sound echoed off the walls like a living beast awakening from death. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Magnus Virelli stepped forward slowly, his expression completely transformed. The billionaire who had screamed at experts moments earlier now looked genuinely stunned. Elias simply wiped his hands with an old rag. 5 minutes. That was all it took. Word spread through the building faster than wildfire. Employees whispered about the maintenance worker who solved what elite engineers couldn't. Some reacted with embarrassment. Others with admiration. But Elias tried returning quietly to his cleaning duties as if nothing happened. Then Magnus stopped him. For the first time, the billionaire actually looked at him closely. Saw the exhaustion beneath his eyes. The faded work boots. The wedding ring still hanging from a chain around his neck. Magnus asked why a man capable of that repair was pushing a mop instead of leading a workshop. Elias hesitated. Then he told the truth. Life happened. He explained how hospital bills consumed everything after his wife's illness. How he sold his tools one by one to survive. How he took the maintenance job because it guaranteed stable hours for raising Junie alone. He admitted he hadn't touched serious automotive work in years because surviving became more important than dreaming. The garage grew quiet listening to him. For many workers there, it was the first time they truly saw him as a person. Magnus stared at the revived Bugatti for a long moment before quietly saying something nobody expected. "You saved my reputation today." Then he handed Elias his business card and walked away. The next morning, Elias arrived expecting life to continue normally. Instead he found a new toolbox beside his locker. Brand new. Professional grade. Inside was a handwritten note. For the man who listens to machines. No signature. That same day, Elias Motors offered Elias a full mechanical position with triple his current salary. Benefits. Flexible hours for his daughter. Training certifications fully paid. Elias nearly broke down reading the contract. That evening he picked up Junie from school earlier than usual. They stopped for ice cream even though money had always been too tight for small luxuries. Junie noticed tears in his eyes while they sat beneath golden afternoon sunlight near the park. When he finally told her they wouldn't have to worry about losing the house anymore, she hugged him so tightly he could barely breathe. And for the first time in years, Elias cried openly. Not from pain. From relief. Months passed, and the story spread far beyond the garage walls. Customers requested Elias specifically. Young mechanics gathered around him because he taught without arrogance. He treated janitors with the same respect as executives because he remembered what invisibility felt like. But the most beautiful change happened at home. The darkness slowly lifted from their tiny duplex. Junie laughed more often. Elias stopped staring silently at unpaid bills late at night. Sometimes they drove through the city together with windows down and music playing while sunset painted the streets gold. The future no longer felt like a collapsing bridge beneath their feet. One afternoon, Elias found Junie drawing at the kitchen table. She had sketched him standing beside the Bugatti with giant superhero muscles and a cape flowing behind him. At the top she wrote 4 words in crooked handwriting. "My dad fixes hearts." Elias sat there staring at the drawing while tears blurred his vision again. Because deep down, he realized something important. The Bugatti was never the real story. The real story was a broken man who believed his best days were gone. A father who thought the world had forgotten him. A human being buried beneath grief and exhaustion until one small moment reminded everyone, including himself, that value does not disappear simply because life becomes difficult. Sometimes brilliance hides behind silence. Sometimes heroes wear stained work boots. And sometimes all a person needs is one chance. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video with someone who may need hope today. You never know who is quietly struggling while the world looks the other way. And before this story ends, comment below, every person deserves a second chance. Years later, long after the headlines faded and newer luxury cars filled the showroom, people at Elias Motors still remembered the morning the dead Bugatti came roaring back to life. Not because of the car itself, but because of the man standing beside it when the engine started. A tired single father who walked into work carrying nothing except responsibility, grief, and love for his daughter. A man the world almost overlooked. Until 5 minutes changed everything.